What are we going to do to make sure that in the brave new world where AI is supporting amazing healthcare systems, revolutionizing education, sorting out all of the issues that we've got, who is going to be having these jobs? And it shouldn't just be going to lucky few.
If you have been following the Tech Leaders podcast since the beginning or for quite some time, you will know that each year we dive deep into a specific topic through a special multi-part series. We've explored in the past women in tech, we've delved into the world of AI, and this year we are once again turning our focus to AI, this time with more of an emphasis on generative AI especially, and its profound impact on society, business, education, and much, much more. We have curated a lineup of exceptional guests who will share their unique perspective on the evolution of generative AI as AI becomes increasingly ubiquitous and increasingly becomes a part of our everyday lives. Our goal is to present insight from thought leaders, business innovators, and those at the forefront of this extraordinary wave of innovation. And it wouldn't be the same without my partner in crime for this series. I am thrilled to be joined once again by the brilliant Professor Kerensa Jennings. Kerensa is not only an author and a professor of media, strategy and communications, but she's also held prominent roles at the likes of BBC, BT, and even the royal household. In addition to her academic and professional achievements, Kerensa is also a qualified executive coach and a non-executive director, sitting on boards for some of the UK's most respected and well-known organisations. So our first guest is none other than the fantastic Maggie Philbin. Maggie shot to fame in the late 70s presenting Swap Shop and went on to present one of the most iconic TV programs of the 80s and 90s, Tomorrow's World, and it's just become a household name and had an incredible career in TV and media. Since Tomorrow's World, Maggie has remained in the technology innovation space. She's definitely what you would regard as a thought leader and has been very prominent in helping young people realize their potential and thrive in, excuse the pun, tomorrow's world, but also helping young people get jobs in the technology sector and thrive in a technology-driven world. It's an honor. We were so excited when Maggie accepted the invitation to come on the Tech Leaders podcast. It's Maggie Philbin OBE. Maggie, I'm so pleased that you agreed to do this. I grew up watching Tomorrow's World, so I'm completely aware of you. You and Kerensa know each other really well. I'm so excited to meet you, so excited to get you on the Tech Leaders podcast. Just wanted to say big thank you for coming on.
Well, Gareth, at this point, I do have to ask you both to be very honest and say, were you watching Tomorrow's World for Tomorrow's World, or were you watching Tomorrow's World because Top of the Pops came on afterwards?
For Tomorrow's World.
Well, I know.
So many people, you know, they had parents who said, okay, you can watch Top of the Pops if you watch Tomorrow's World. And then, despite themselves, they were drawn into the world of tech and science.
Yeah.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I personally, I was a bit of a geek, so I probably preferred Tomorrow's World. Well, I love my music as well, so I probably liked it equally as much as Top of the Pops.
Something that I really wish I'd done, because we talked about it endlessly. So Sarah Green was a mate. My sister-in-law was Janice Long, the DJ. And we often talked about what if we all wore the same outfit? And we reckon we get away with it because our producers were so obsessed with their own show. And then they would do their show, then celebrate afterwards in hospitality. So they wouldn't know until afterwards what the joke would have been with the audience. I so wish we'd actually carried it out.
You should have done it on, like, say, April Fools around that time or something, you know. This is a bit of a joke. That would have been fab. That's brilliant. What about you, Kerensa? Were you a Top of the Pops fan or a Tomorrow's World fan?
I like them both, but I don't remember that one came after the other. So I definitely wasn't watching one to watch the other. Definitely for me, I watched Tomorrow's World for Tomorrow's World. And it was super exciting many years later when I then actually, like you, Gareth, meeting Maggie for the first time today. First time I met Maggie, I was a little bit sort of starstruck because I thought I grew up, first of all, watching Saturday Morning Swap Shop, and then tomorrow, and it was just, oh my gosh, it's Maggie Philbin. Oh wow, what do I say? What do I say to her? You know, it's so exciting, and it's just such a privilege to have got to know you over the years and had a chance to work with you on various things as well, Maggie.
Well, that's how I feel right now, Kerensa. So thanks for laying that out. But look, Tomorrow's World was fabulous for getting people excited about technology innovation, all types of technology.
Yeah.
So that leads me on to my opening question, Maggie. I think we just, obviously, I just want to jump straight in. What are you most excited about in terms of technology innovation today, especially in relation to generative AI?
Yeah. I think we're on the cusp of something potentially, like one of the big game changers. We often look at tech and we see certain things that happen, the internet, etc. Now, I think the potential for AI to do a massive amount of good is absolutely there. But I think we are at a stage where we're talking about potential. The good thing is that there's, I think, the awareness of where things like social media have taken us that we couldn't have expected has meant that there is a certain amount of caution and care being taken around AI, because we understand, yes, it could do amazing things. On the other hand, it could be very damaging. And I'm not talking about end of the world scenarios, but I am talking about what would happen if there was, bias in the data that the AI is using to, whether it's in education, producing predicted grades or helping to support young people with personalized education, or whether it's in health.
I think there's so much to unpack there, but I think what I'd like to do, Maggie, is just rewind a little bit, and let's just get to know you a little bit more, because I think what's got you to this point, especially the amazing stuff you're doing with TeenTech that you alluded to there. I think there's a really good backstory to it, and some of the listeners will be aware of you, some of them maybe not. But could you maybe give us a little bit of an introduction to the early part of your life and how you embarked on a career in television to start with?
It was extraordinary, really. I did a drama and English degree at university. I didn't do science or tech. For many years, I wanted to be a vet, and I realized I was never going to get a grade A in chemistry. So I did a complete handbrake turn and sort of did the arts. But while I was at university, I was always haunted by what I hadn't done. And in fact, the drama department was opposite the medical school at Manchester. So I had to walk past the School of Medicine every single day. So I never quite lost touch with science and tech. And while I was doing my finals and looking for displacement activity of every kind, I saw an ad. And it was in The Stage, which I was reading because I'd done a show and it was being reviewed. And the ad read like a very sort of bogus, in fact, I thought it was a dodgy agent, because it sort of said, do you want to be a top TV personality? And it listed all of these things that this paragon would be able to do. And so I wrote a very tongue-in-cheek letter, because obviously we're talking 1978 here. And I forgot about it. It was a box number, so I hadn't got a clue what this was. And then I got a telephone call in the flat that I shared in Manchester, inviting me for an interview at the BBC in London. And I was so kind of super excited that I put the phone down and realised I did not know. I was none the wiser about what this job actually was. And my flatmate and I had this long discussion about, should I phone them back and ask them? And we both decided, no, that would look desperate. It would look like you would do anything. So no. So I had to go to this interview in London completely blind. And it turned out to be Swap Shop. And very thankfully, I was interviewed by a wonderful woman who I don't know, because I often asked her, why did you give me the job? I had no experience. You're going to be doing a live Saturday morning show. And she said, well, we asked you one question, which is, where did you get your boots from? And you talked for 35 minutes. So we thought you might be all right. but that woman, Rose McGillan, and I credit her with so much, because she took a real risk with me. But in fairness, she took a real risk with all of the presenters on that very first Saturday morning show. And we were all very, very different. And what she did, she said, look, we want you, please don't start watching everybody else who presents television programs. We like you. You will make mistakes, but we'd like you to make your own mistakes, not other people's. So please don't try copying people. There's something about you that we really like. And I was so green and I did make every mistake under the sun, but she gave me the confidence that there was something that they liked about me. And that was crucial, because I felt incredibly insecure. So she gave me a massive, massive opportunity. She took a risk. And she put, and that ad for that first job is still in my downstairs loo. And I often quote it, because there was one phrase, which was the thing that really made me apply, apart from just not wanting to revise for exams anymore, which was, there was a list of what they wanted someone to be able to do, or the experience they needed. And then it said, or would you be willing to learn? And that's something that I think really needs to be in job descriptions everywhere, because as we all know, there's endless sort of pieces of research that have been done, that if there is a list of, we need you to have X skills and X experience, that a bloke will apply, even if he's only got 5 of the 10 things, whereas a woman will not consider applying unless she's got all of them. And so that little phrase, would you be willing to learn, was very important.
And Maggie, what was the most incredible thing you learned during that experience when you were first working in television?
I think what I learned, I was very lucky. I was working with 3 very experienced people. So you got Noel Edmonds, who at that I feel was at the height of his prowess in terms of Mr. Live television. Had Keith Chegwin, who was bonkers, but had so much energy and really understood.
That's 2 legends there you've mentioned of British TV at that period.
And 2 completely different approaches. So, Noel was very witty and calm, and you had Keith, where you never quite knew what was going to happen, but was extraordinary with live crowds and live audiences. He really understood how to work with a live crowd. And then you had John Craven, who was, again, a very different personality, but so experienced in terms of telling a news story and making it comprehensible, understanding what the story actually was. So the qualities of each of those people, I just felt I had so much to learn from them, and I was so fortunate. And to be in an environment which was very forgiving.
I've got to ask you this, Maggie. What do you think, if you didn't see that advert, where would you have ended up? What would you have done with your career, do you think?
It's so funny. I think it was in my last term at university. I did some producing, and I looked around to see who ought to be in this play. And a certain person called Rick Mail caught my eye, who was in the year below me at university. And Adrian Edmondson and a number of
young
other people.
Ones.
Absolutely.
I love that.
So I do think I would have been quite good as a casting director, actually. But I'd worked out by that stage at Manchester that I was never going to act or perform. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I hadn't worked out for myself that I was quite good at being me, which is, I think, what I've done for the last 40, 50 years, is simply be me.
And you're very good at
it. But I hadn't worked that out. So I was very much thinking about working behind the scenes, either in theatre or in television. So when I saw that ad, and when I was invited for interview, no way was I expecting that they would give that role to me. But I was thinking this could be the way that I get a bit of an into this institution of the BBC. And I understand, because by then I'd seen so many of my peers be applying for those jobs and not getting them. So I felt this is an amazing opportunity to meet people. And they'll find their presenter for Saturday mornings, but I can perhaps persuade them. Maybe I can be a researcher or something. I never imagined I would be in front of the camera. After Swap Shop, very fortunately, a Tomorrow's World producer was watching Saturday mornings and saw me explaining, I think it was how the cotton mills worked, and thought, oh, she's quite good at explaining things, and offered me a job on a show that was running just for a series of 8 called The Show Me Show, which you won't remember. And again, I feel so fortunate because there wasn't a focus group deciding on who the presenters ought to be. It was a producer able to go, oh, she looks like she might be all right. We'll give her a go. And so that was lucky. And then the Tomorrow's World team watched what I did on The Show Me Show. And I think it was sort of keep your enemies close. And again, I was just offered the job on Tomorrow's World, which in a frightening way, I hesitated because I thought, but I'm no good at chemistry. How am I going to manage this job? I was very mindful of the fact that I wasn't coming from what you might call a conventional background into presenting a science and technology show, but I was willing to learn, and I feel that was one of the wonderful things about Tomorrow's World, was that as reporters we were learning alongside the audience, and it was a fabulous opportunity to see the technology that was on the horizon.
What was the most audacious idea that you came across in those days that you thought, this is never going to happen, and then it did?
I would like to say that I was always very prescient in being able to pick up a piece of tech. Because remember, one of the extraordinary things about Tomorrow's World was that we were able to demonstrate technology before it was on the market. So it was at prototype stage. So this wasn't tech which was fully functioning by any stretch of the imagination. And so you would have something in the studio. And I know that I had a particular fear of anything that was voice activated, because you knew that was going to go wrong. You were fairly sure, because the pitch of your voice changes. No matter how much you try to predict what will your voice be like when it's live, there's a subtle change. And at that time, voice-activated technology picked it up, and you were left, shouting at a particular device. But to answer your question, we often talked about one day you will have a computer in your pocket. And I don't think in 1982, which was when I started on Tomorrow's World, I completely believed.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a mobile phone, but it seemed impossible, because actually at that time, the Tomorrow's World office didn't even have a computer before, we went to the studio. But in the run up, the scripts were handwritten. The producer would scroll something, then they'd bring it over to you, and you would cross it out and put your bits in. I was ahead of the game because I had a portable electric typewriter that I used to take into the office. But a mate of mine came in and just couldn't believe the way that we worked. So it was very hard to believe that one day that technology would be so accessible. And when you think about the tech that we do have at our fingertips and that we can use, it is extraordinary. I never take it for granted. The fact that we can do this now. And so on the one hand, I always feel very encouraged, because I think it means that far more people have got access to tech, far more people have got the ability to create products which are relevant to the people who will be using them. But on the other hand, I think there's a massive gap where still far too much technology is produced by a very, very narrow section of society, and that the idea of making it a level playing field is still a way off.
And is that part of what you're doing with TeenTech, trying to help people kind of think about that question?
Yeah, no, exactly that. For young people, and in one sense, they are digital natives in that they've grown up with technology in a way that I didn't grow up with tech. So they do have a different view on it. But on the other hand, what we try to do with TeenTech is to help young people understand, look, you could be developing and making this technology. And if you are going to do that, what do you really want that technology to do? Something that we've done recently is a program called TeenTech, where we've worked with young people all over the UK, asking them to explore the idea of ethical innovation. So what matters to them with a piece of technology? And it's been very interesting because they do care about these things. We have things of every which kind, in terms of, like how can we make the online safety bill and all the rest of it. But so young people are often considered, but I don't think they're consulted enough with what they really want. And they do care about the environment. They do care about fairness in society. So they do care that if you are, for instance, a tech company, are you really thinking about the impact that this piece of tech will have? And are you thinking about how accessible this piece of tech is? And when you are producing it, where are all of the elements for that piece of technology coming from? And the fairness, for workers all over the world. So they think very deeply about these things. And we do have to listen because they're going to inherit the systems and that we're producing.
Can you tell us how TeenTech come about, the TeenTech Foundation? How did that happen, Maggie?
I often get asked to talk about women in technology, or, why don't we have enough engineers, et cetera, et cetera. And back in 2007, I was asked to speak at yet another conference about this. And I said to the organizers, and I don't know what made me say this, but I said, do you know what? We know what the stats are. Why don't we just go and interview some young people? And it's not that they will say anything different, but I just had this hunch that we would get something from those young people that endless stats about the proportion of women choosing physics or whatever was not going to show. And that's exactly what happened. We went into a school. The teachers were amazing because I asked them, please don't prime your students. And the kids were just really candid about what they felt about the school curriculum, in that it felt incredibly irrelevant to anything in the outside world. They talked about how, because I said, can you name anyone contemporary working in science and tech? This was 2007. And I can share the video where kid after kid went, Einstein? and that was it. Full stop. Einstein, full stop.
Brian Cox was famous for being in a band at that point, I think, wasn't
Absolutely.
he?
So Brian Cox wasn't, standing looking up wistfully at the stars. But there was a real, so that there was very little for them just to grasp about, how science, what working in science and tech might actually mean. After doing those interviews, I thought, right, I'm going to do something about this. And we ran the first TeenTech event in 2008. And from the get-go, we wanted it to be completely open to everyone. So I was interested in diversity, but in the widest sense of the word. And I wanted it to be collaborative because I felt there was a lot of effort going into it was very piecemeal. And so we brought together everyone in the region and said, right, we want to do this thing. We're going to call it TeenTech. Do you want to be part of it? It was really successful. And what's been lovely about TeenTech is that it has evolved and it has been driven by young people. We have a young person steering group who suggest ideas for TeenTech and who explain what they feel they're not getting currently from education. We talk obviously to companies, all of the stakeholders, and we listen very, very hard. So in a sense, I always describe TeenTech as a grassroots organisation tackling global issues. And it's been a real privilege. I mean, it's 16 years since we first did that initial event. Things aren't changing fast enough. I get very frustrated with the glacial progress of education to meet the real needs of young people. They're coming into a world which is very different to the world I came into at 18. And that, by the way, is not a criticism of teachers who I think are amazing. I've got no idea how they are incredible. This is not a criticism of teachers, but it is a criticism of some of the systems and some of the ways, we measure the things which are easy to measure and some of the things which are less easy to measure, like creativity, critical thinking. And it's those core skills, those core qualities that actually, I believe, shape a young person's future, because learning and skills, that is important. You can learn a skill relatively quickly. You can't become more confident or more free thinking or bold thinking. That takes years of having the opportunity to do that. And at the moment, I feel our education system, there's no time for most children to be able to develop those qualities. And some students do, if you're lucky enough to have, sometimes it can be individual teachers who are powerhouses in what they do in their schools.
Yeah.
But they're doing it because they believe it's important. That they are not being paid more for doing that. Other things are being measured, which the teachers themselves in their hearts know this really makes no difference to the future of those young people. So I feel very strongly, and that's why organizations like TeenTech, and there are many others, and I always, I'm not claiming that TeenTech is the only answer here. And it's very important that organizations support other organizations who are working in this space, because it's a massive ship to try and turn. But one of the reasons that we do what we do is we can see the difference we make to young people. We can see the difference we make to teachers. Many teachers say, "You've reminded me why I became a teacher," which is fabulous to hear. And helping those young people understand the fast emerging opportunities, helping them understand their own qualities, the things that actually they are really good at. They may not be measured by a conventional exam system, but there are certain qualities that they have. Helping them see the different routes they can take, that you don't have to go to university. University might be brilliant for some. Apprenticeships might be the way forward for others, helping them see the pathways. And most importantly, giving them a network. That's what you really need, is a network. You need in your network people who go, "Oh, do you know what? You may be finding this tough at the moment, but if you just push on through, it'll be worth it." You need that kind of person. You need someone with the understanding of, "Do you know what? You are brilliant at computer games. Have you thought about, cyber security, or, because the way you think could be quite helpful in that area." You need someone who goes, "Right, well, what about coming and having some work experience with us?" So it's complicated.
So I was very struck by what you said about confidence as a quality and something that you can't just learn overnight. I wondered if you could, you've worked with many, many thousands of young people now over the years, but is there maybe one story you could draw on from your memory banks of someone who did develop some confidence through the work they did by acquiring the skills and being exposed to that kind of project-based work that you do?
Yeah. We've got many, many stories. I'll tell this particular one. I think it is very powerful. So one of the good things about TeenTech is it has a lot of stickiness. So schools work with us for many, many years. Students will do many different projects with us. And this particular school got in touch and said, I wonder whether you might be able to help us with a particular student. She's been in hospital and she emerged from hospital and she was catatonic. She doesn't speak. She speaks to her mum, but she doesn't speak to anyone other than her mum. She's got a lot of really interesting ideas, and I wonder whether, through the TeenTech Award program, could you support her with developing her ideas? And so you said, yes, we'll find her a mentor. And so this young person had an idea. It was a drone-based idea, and it was around making education accessible to all. And so she was thinking about how can you bring really inspiring education to young people who might be isolated. The example in her project was around young people who might be in Africa. But obviously, she was also thinking about young people who might be in hospital without access to inspiring education. And so we connected her with a very sensitive mentor from BT, who was sort of head of drones. I hadn't realized that BT had a head of drones, but they did. And he was wonderful. And so he provided, there was a bit of to and froing with emails. And then I suggested to the teacher, what if we had a Teams call? Because I know this bloke is very keen for her to hear from him how impressed he is with her ideas. And I think it might be good for the student. Anyway, so this was arranged, and the student was sitting with her mum, and then we had the mentor from BT and the teacher and myself on the call. And so the mentor asked a few questions, and then you saw Tanvir kind of go to her mum. And then the mum did what any mum, including me, would do, which is get it ever so slightly wrong and repeat it. And this went on for a few minutes. And you could see the student getting more and more frustrated with her mum for getting it wrong. And by the end of the course, she was talking. And that was the first time the teacher had heard her speak for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And so she then...
Incredible.
She developed that project on her, she brought it to the showcase in London. She talked to, the judges. She worked out strategies for how she would do all of this. Now, that for us, it's one of the reasons we do what we do, that you can help a student understand their own potential and hopefully make a real difference. And we see this happen a lot for different reasons. Funnily enough, from the same school, there was a young person who did a number of our virtual events, and he was a teenager who sort of not really engaged with mainstream education. And he enjoyed some of the virtual events we were doing on animation. And the teacher told us that she, some months later, had met this student. And this student, when he had arrived at the school, couldn't see the point of anything, didn't want to live. Anyway, so she bumped into in a corridor. She knew he'd been doing these sessions with us over the holidays. And he told her that he was working with a local rapper, producing all of his videos for him and making quite a bit of money doing this. And these are the students who, when I say that I don't feel that our current education system serves everybody well. You've got students like this, but you've also got students who might obediently jump every single obstacle put in front of them, but they're still not tapping into what is really special about them and what they could do in the future. And that concerns me, that we miss out on a lot of talent by not being able to have a little bit more flex and a little bit more space in the curriculum.
Yeah. This episode is part of the Tech Leaders Podcast AI Series 2.0, brought to you by bedigital. At bedigital, we empower leadership teams to maximize value from their technology investments. Our data and AI services help businesses fully embrace the potential of artificial intelligence. We prepare your data, we streamline your processes, and ensure robust governance so that AI works effortlessly to drive real results. Curious to learn more? Visit bedigitaluk.com or follow us on social media to discover how AI can transform your business. What do you think the impact that generative AI is going to have on the education sector, especially in relation to assessment, and how we examine, exams and coursework and so on and so forth, how we assess students? What's the impact going to be, do you think, over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
I think what we will hopefully see are some of the tasks that teachers have to dedicate a lot of time to at the moment, in terms of some of the grading and marking of work, the being able to personalize some of the learning to suit a student. Some of the admin tasks will be lifted from the teacher. It has to be done in a very ethical way. Mm. And I think teachers need to be careful, and I'm sure they will be, about the use of data and making sure that things are anonymized and not being inappropriately used to train systems. I think there's a way to go on all of this.
Absolutely.
But I do think that some of the heavy lifting will be done. I think it would be great to see if personalized learning and support can be really developed, so you can get encouraging nudges from an AI system that sort of go, now that's a really great opening to, I don't know, could be a history essay or whatever. But are you really sure that Bismarck did that? Shall we just check?
Yeah.
So that there's a little bit of nudging that could support the student. And that, I think, would be really good. And then, in the whole area of SEN, special needs education, I think there's potential for AI to make a real difference.
Yeah.
I think there's a way to go in terms of, making sure that it works well for everyone and works fairly. And there's also openness with both the student and the parents when AI is being used, whether AI is being used to produce school reports, etc. The human eye has to be going over things as well.
Yeah, there has to be a human layer on most things at the moment, doesn't
Absolutely. What I would hope is that this removes a chunk of the teachers' and the learner's time so that real learning can take place, which is more appropriate for the world that we're living in now. And, we do need fresh thinking to tackle some of the major global issues that we have. It needs to be fairer so that the thinking isn't always coming from those with vested interest. So it's not always coming from those with a vested interest in particular technologies or solutions, that it is coming more equitably. We're drawing from a wider and bigger pond. So I think there is potential. It's like potential with caution. AI and, its use in, say, grade prediction, for instance. There are all sorts of potentials for that to go astray if, number one, if the data it's being based on isn't sound, number one, but also as you say, the human element. So I know with my own daughter, her predicted grades for GCSE were not brilliant, but when she realized this was going to have an impact in what was going to happen next, she sorted herself out, and she did the same thing at university. So, but if you just relied on that, an AI predicting this is what you will achieve.
The AI is only as good as the data, isn't it? Sorry, Kerensa.
Exactly. I was just going to actually extract that word rely to ask you another question about the way we think about young people interacting with AI in particular. Relying on a source as a source of truth and developing those critical thinking skills, being able to unpack what may or may not be a deep fake, and also thinking about the environmental impact of AI. These are all other very rich potential territories, aren't they, for how AI can be used in the educational system. And you talked about critical thinking as one of the qualities. That's what you referenced a little bit earlier in the conversation. So I wondered if you could say a little bit about how you see as course content some of the uses of AI coming to bear in the education system.
Well, I mean, in terms of encouraging really astute, deep and critical thinking, it can be used across any subject area, because we've seen all sorts of things, haven't we? So for instance, the way many of us were taught history, and we're taught history from the perspective, actually, frequently, of British colonialism.
Yeah, and very biased sources.
Yes.
Absolutely. It's not just about using AI in terms of, right, is this piece of news real or not? Though I think that it's really important that young people can, in fact, that all of us can unpack those untruths. It'd be interesting, actually, if there are ways for, AI to unpack some of the ways political parties sell themselves to us. When promises are made, how easy would it be to go, well, this is ridiculous. We would like that promise to come true, but we know you're highly unlikely to achieve it, or it can only be achieved at the expense of whatever.
I can imagine it would be the most incredible engagement tool to be able to have live conversations with a historical figure to find out more about them. So you mentioned Einstein earlier. I'd love to have a chat with Einstein. And some of the tech now allows you to do that. Wouldn't that be a wonderful way of helping, young people who may not like more traditional ways of learning, just actually be able to do it on their terms, being able to have a chat, being able to have a text exchange or whatever it is, or be able to do a snap exchange, something like that, using the power of tech to be able to engage and learn through completely alternative means.
Absolutely, Kerensa, because it brings certain things to life. I think what we've probably within education ignored for far too long is that people do learn in very, very different ways. And some people need to learn the hard way with a lot of things. Some students are very visual. Some students are, will learn, like my daughter, when she's revising, she would always have loud music on. I've got no idea how on earth, because I couldn't learn like that. But that was really important to her. Others are kinetic learners. And as you say, having those very powerful encounters, it's a different way, a different approach. And the key thing really is what the AI systems, where they are drawing their information and their data from. They're getting better, but they're not always by any stretch of the imagination, 100% correct.
Yes.
Can I ask you about jobs displacement, Maggie, and how you think this is going to play out? I know there's a lot of dystopian rhetoric out there and predictions and things about, millions of jobs being replaced in the next couple of years. I think it's probably going to be quite more gradual than that. And I think jobs have been replaced by technology since the dawn of time. So there's nothing's changed there. But this may happen at a speed that we have not seen before. What do you think about that? And what new vocational directions do you think will emerge over the next couple of years? What type of jobs do you think will be created as a result of the emergence of generative AI?
There will be job displacement. And, we're seeing it already.
I think it's already happening, isn't it? I've seen some recently, yeah.
We're seeing it within journalism. But equally, as the technology develops, the thing that we constantly see with tech is new roles emerging. But those new roles, they do demand higher level skills. And that's why, coming back to what I was saying earlier about how important it is that we rethink what's happening in schools is very important, because it's not just about lots of facts and, taking on lots of sort of factual learning, but it is about that being able to discriminate how likely is this to be right? How unlikely is this to be right? And then having an ability to be sort of a creative and quite a bold thinker and an imaginative thinker about what might we do next. And at the moment, the thing that worries me is that within education, we're not giving the majority of students the space to be able to develop those skills. So yes, I think the world of jobs will change. And as you say, we're seeing it across all areas. At one time, if you were running a business, you had bookkeepers and everything. Well, now you've got apps which are doing this for you.
Yeah.
So there is this displacement. But now, of course, people are building those apps and those systems. So that is a new range of activity. But
yeah, I've got an example of that actually. The other day, it was a couple of weeks ago, I created a very basic website for my wife's business. I haven't got no idea to code, or I'm not technical in that respect. But I used this AI platform and knocked up a website for her in probably 20 minutes. I could have done it a lot quicker if I was probably, if I was better at it. But what I'm saying is that things like creating websites, a couple of years ago, that wouldn't have been available. I would have had to have gone to a web developer. Even for a basic 1 or 2 or 3 page website, now I can knock it up in no time. I mean, there is really good quality as well. It's unbelievable what's available. That's a basic example. But what's that going to be like in 10 years? I'm potentially going to be able to go onto a large language model and create a CRM system, a piece of software, so I no longer need this SaaS product I'm paying a lot of money for. That's going to change a lot of things as people get more. It's not even the technology is pretty much there, but it's people interacting with the technology for really, for big, sort of outcomes like that, for beneficial outcomes like creating a CRM system. That's when I think we're going to start to see enormous change. The SaaS industry is bound to get hit with this. People are creating games for themselves on large language models and hosting it, and then they own that IP sort of thing, and so they don't need to purchase games. I mean, this is only going to get more sophisticated. It's going to be interesting to see what the impact is on industries and subsequently on jobs and then subsequently on society. Do you see what I mean?
To pick up on that, though, I think technology has always been a remarkable disruptor of society. And in many ways, it can help make positive change. And in many ways, it can help make very difficult and challenging change. So I think it's about, going back to what Maggie said at the start about ethics, it's about making sure that we've got the right guardrails in place, but also opening up our minds to the possibilities of that disruption. Tech at its very best can be gloriously disruptive and for very, very positive societal good. I think we've already talked about some of the impacts AI could have on education. There's also whole sectors such as energy generation, such as healthcare, where AI could make remarkable differences.
Oh, absolutely.
There's so many different sectors where just the use of AI-driven robotics can help speed up productivity in certain areas. What you often find through society is where there are uplifts in and upsides in one area, there are downsides in another. And overall, it tends to balance out, providing the right guardrails and ethics are there.
But that's where, making sure, and we saw in the sort of recent GCSE results, so there was disparity between North and South.
Yes.
And this is why sorting out that disparity is really important, because what we can learn from history is that where we have a sector where suddenly the jobs are no longer there. So, whether it's the miners, whether it's the steel industry, where you have a whole community which has depended on those jobs, what we can see is then suddenly you're pitched into 2 generations of unemployment. And that, I think, is something that we need to be thinking about, is what are we going to do to make sure that in the brave new world where AI is supporting amazing healthcare systems, revolutionizing education, making, sorting out all of the issues that we've got in terms of, global warming and energy production.
Yeah.
Who is going to be having these jobs? And, it shouldn't just be going to the lucky few. And I think that is a piece of learning that we're still catching up on, really.
Yeah, well said.
I think that's something that we as a society and also government and public sector needs to incubate and keep an eye on that change so it's not too dramatic and it doesn't have too much of a detrimental effect on communities and societies and things. I think that's a big challenge coming up. But what I've been dying to ask you actually is, obviously you've had an incredible career and you've obviously got a long way to go as well. But looking back now to that young lady who saw that advert, I just want to take you back to that moment when you started your career. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to that person?
I wish I'd had a bit more confidence in myself. I would tell her to be much more confident and have a little bit more self-belief and to trust some of her own thinking. So many times, I don't do it so much now. I've sat in, whether it's a meeting, thinking, oh gosh, all of these people, they know far more than I do.
Sure.
And actually thinking something quite different to what's going on in the room and thinking, oh, well, maybe I'm just being really stupid by not. But now I will ask that question and I don't care if they think I'm stupid.
Yeah.
I will ask those questions. But I just wish I'd been able to do that a little bit earlier, really. So that's what I would say.
We asked that question to we've had over 100 guests now on this podcast, and a version of that has come up many times, is just having the courage to ask almost childlike, curious questions, regardless of what people think, and as being a regret, because if you don't ask them questions earlier on in your career, because you think you're going to sound stupid or whatever it is going on in your head.
Maggie, if you could have invented any tech that currently we're using in the world today, what is the piece of tech you wish you could have invented?
I love that.
Oh, I've got, like a piece of tech which has not been properly developed or invented that I wish was.
Even better.
What I would really like is I look out, I live on a London street, little Victorian houses, cars parked along this road. And I look at old pictures of that street. Obviously, it looked very different in the 1800s, 1900s. And I really wish you could just go, right, I'm going to go over and see Gareth today. And I just click on my mobile phone. And then there is something outside my house that transports me to Gareth's easily and effectively. I don't think self-driving cars are the answer. I don't know what this piece of technology would be.
Teleporting.
I know. Why do we not have this? That would be fantastic, because I'd love to get rid of cars everywhere. I know this won't make me very popular with car manufacturers. I'd love to get rid of them all. I'd love transportation to be easy, and also for it to be easy for everybody.
Yeah.
Some of my friends have got disabilities. They can't use the tube. It's ridiculous. One person who was a Paralympic dressage rider said it was easier to get her and her horse over to the Olympics than getting herself from Maidenhead into town. She works with a tech company. Because that is ridiculously hard. And so, yeah. So an amazing transport system, teleportation would do it, that got got rid of all of the cars sitting in my road.
Brilliant stuff.
Brilliant.
Maybe we need to throw in a little bit of chemistry as well.
I got to ask you, what is the most ridiculous thing you saw on Tomorrow's World, which completely didn't work because it was just bizarre?
Oh, gosh.
I'm sure you had a few. I remember there was quite a few wacky things on Tomorrow's World, wasn't there?
One of the funny things about Tomorrow's World was sometimes the way the research was conducted. So we had universities coming to us with all sorts of extraordinary developments. We had big companies like Sony going, hey, look at this new thing. It's called a compact disc. And then we had inventors. And the inventors, a lot of the inventors invented things that did more than one thing. I actually had a real soft spot for some of those items. So you had inventors who said, well, look at this ironing board, but guess what? it converts into a rowing machine, or etc.
A rowing machine. How random is that?
Oh no! But I promise you that we had these things, and then we would demonstrate them. And I remember someone bringing in some kind of I can't remember what it was. It was it was along those lines, where it was one thing that converted into something totally unrelated, and then a third thing. And he came into the office to demonstrate this piece of kit, took it apart, never got it back together again. And so it was, and I, as I say, I had a very much a soft spot for that. And then one of the other ways that we got items on Tomorrow's World was because people had interests in particular areas, one of which seemed to be skiing. I mean, I can't ski, but we did endless items about heated ski poles, one of which I think set off the fire alarms in the studio when we were rehearsing. And obviously you had things where the tech, for whatever reason, malfunctioned, sometimes down to us, it has to be said. Like we had a gizmo that it was a way of painting lampposts. So this thing was attached to the bottom of a lamppost filled with paint, and then it whizzed up the lamppost like that. Worked perfectly. And then Richard Rice in the gallery at just after the last rehearsal said, bit of a problem with this, because we're doing this demonstration, and essentially what we're doing is painting a grey lamppost grey, and we can't see it. So we need a different colour paint. And the producer tried to explain, but the thing is, this is special paint for this thing. And Richard was having none of it. So the paint was changed to a different colour. And then it completely malfunctioned, and it went nuts, and it painted it stripy. It was going up and down the lamppost this, So and that was our doing. It was nothing. I mean, the poor...
And that was on camera, was it?
Oh, yes. It was a live show. And the thing was, we kept going back. Right, well, let's go back to Peter with his lamppost. And then it would malfunction again. And it was... And it was a particular show that stands out in our memory because everything went wrong. Howard was demonstrating a tomato sorting machine that could tell the difference between 100 different shades of tomatoes. And as he set it up, you kind of, you knew what was going to happen.
Sort of thought, why?
And it's very important if you're dealing with tomatoes to have a machine like this that understands the level of ripeness and everything. Anyway, green tomatoes and red tomatoes were coming down the same chute. That was something, and I'd learnt it from my days on Swap Shop, actually, and it still applied on Tomorrow's World, because those moments were the ones that, if you were watching the show, you'd go, come in here. Someone watch this.
Well, that's what made it an institution, was things like that, wasn't it? Because it had that sort of live, so anything can happen like that, because you're dealing with such wacky products, but also you'd see something you were really impressed by, and it's something you talk about in work the next day. Mm-hmm. Did you see that thing on Tomorrow's World? Well, imagine if that's going to happen in the future, that type of thing. So it was just, there was loads of talking points as a result of it, and that's why it became so iconic, I think. But that's brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, Maggie. It's been an absolute honour and privilege. I really enjoyed chatting to you, and yourself, Kerensa, as well. It's been really, really great.
Oh, it's been fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Thanks, Gareth.
No, it's lovely to chat to you. And here's to the future.
Here's to the future. Yeah, like Tomorrow's World.
So where can people find you, Maggie? And where, are you active on any platforms or anything? And where can they find out more about TeenTech?
TeenTech you can find on teentech.com, and I'm on Twitter, but like everyone, taking it, and I will always call it that, by the way, I cannot do the acting, but like everyone, I use it less and less. I'm there, so if people reach out to me, I'm there, and you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and do connect, because it's always great to understand about innovations that are happening if you happen to be involved in them. And obviously, if you want to help us with our TeenTech mission, there's shed loads of help that we need.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, well, I will certainly check that out. But thanks for coming on the Tech Leaders podcast. Kerensa really enjoyed that. That was she's just a treat, isn't she? I think I alluded to just off camera, but we really lit a flame in her at the end, didn't we, when she was talking about technology and education, but also the evolution of the curriculum and how we need to align the education system a little bit better with the way the jobs market is evolving. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. And, this is a person who she spent her whole life helping people understand things. And she was originally doing that in television and having a lot of fun with it. And now she's doing it as her career, helping young people understand stuff and also helping teachers and also helping people in the educational system bottom up. But this is something that she has dedicated her whole life to, and she's wonderful at it. She sort of lights flames in others for a living. So it was very satisfying that we were able to light that spark in her as well.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk to somebody who's as passionate as Maggie, and especially when they've dedicated a life's work to what they're passionate about. I love that sort of helping young people for tomorrow's world, the play on her, on the fact that she was obviously a very successful presenter of Tomorrow's World. And just to quickly pick up on that as well, I mean, the story of how she got into television was fantastic. So yeah, great prompt, great insider knowledge on that. That was a real treat for the listeners. But also I love the, just the sort of inside story on the way that Tomorrow's World worked and stuff like that. It's such a culturally iconic production. But I think it really did relate to the main point as well, which is, generative AI is the latest iteration of technology innovation. And Maggie just basically, she pointed out that this is the real deal. This is going to change a lot of things in the jobs market, in the education system, and so many other facets of society and business. I was quite pleased to hear how positive Maggie was about that. There's a lot of dystopian sort of predictions out there about this, but Maggie seemed quite calm and sees it as just another iteration of technology evolution. New jobs will be created, opportunity will be created, and we're in good hands, type thing. And I that was very reassuring.
Yes, and particularly if the younger generations are growing up with an eye on ethics and preserving the planet and doing things with kindness and doing things with the right kind of elimination of biases and so forth. And I really liked her emphasis on making sure that technology at its best make sure that nobody is left behind. And I think she's working really hard to help make sure that that is the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and TeenTech seem to be doing great things. I mean, I can totally see it completely aligns with Maggie's character. I think her involvement in an organization like that is very unsurprising. Have you had any experience interacting with that organization yourself, Kerensa?
I have. In fact, this is my 10th year of being involved, and I would really suggest anyone listening who works in a corporate that wants to kind of have a link into tomorrow's pipeline of talent, get involved with TeenTech. It has been an enriching experience for my life. So I worked with them when I was at BBC. I worked with them when I was at the Royal Household, based at Buckingham Palace, and I worked with them when I was at BT, and I'm continuing to work with them now. I think it's a wonderful way of giving something back. You can help in lots of different ways. I've been a mentor for some of the young people. I've also been a judge in the competitions. And I've also, through various things, I've helped create sponsorship agreements as well. Because, of course, it's a charity. It doesn't run on air. You do need funding. And they work with a range of amazing companies. And I think anyone listening today, I mean, I would really encourage you to look it up, because it's a wonderful way of getting your company properly involved with the future generation and helping shape them and helping spark confidence and inspiration in the young people of today for tomorrow's world.
I, for one, will be checking some of the stuff out that you mentioned there, and I'm sure some of the listeners will be too. And another thing that I think was a really great point by Maggie is just that having that, and this is obviously just more of a thing for younger people coming into the jobs market, or actually it's applicable to people at all stages in their career, but it's about having the confidence and in some cases bravery to be authentic, to be yourself, to ask the questions that come natural to you in an environment where you could be perceived as, oh, that's a stupid question. No, ask the questions you need to ask to get what you need to get to get yourself up to speed. I think that's something that's quite refreshing to hear Maggie say that is essentially her biggest regret from her early career, is not having the confidence to be like that. I think that was a big lesson.
And I think all of us in our dealings with young people should help them feel okay about asking things that they don't understand, or asking clarifying questions, and just not being afraid to put themselves out there a little bit, because it is only by experimenting in a whole different set of ways, that you can advance your own learning and you can advance innovation. Experimentation is the key to all of that. And I sometimes ask questions that might be perceived to be silly. In fact, I was in a board meeting yesterday and I asked a question which I prefaced, "Forgive my ignorance." And I thought to myself afterwards, why am I giving myself that caveat? I should, even now at my age, with all my experience, I should be able to just confidently ask the question and not worry about what people think. So I still try to get better myself. And I think we can all encourage younger people going through school and, apprentices and through university, but also younger people in the environments in which we work. Just reach out to them, make sure that they know it's okay. I can't ever remember in my whole life thinking someone was silly for a question they ask. And I'm pretty sure most people would never think that you're silly because you're asking a particular question or that you didn't know a particular thing.
Yeah,
it's completely
absolutely
okay not to know everything.
Of course, 100% agree. But what a great way to start this series, Kerensa. We've got some amazing guests lined up. We won't let the cat out of the bag just yet. It'll get announced on social media soon. But I think, we've got some fantastic guests lined up. Maggie has kicked us off. We have got guests on in senior leadership roles within some of the world's most recognizable business brands on their journey in terms of implementing AI within businesses and job creation and so on and so forth. So really excited about the rest of this generative AI series. Really excited to be working with you again, Kerensa.
Thank you.
So it's going to be a busy couple of weeks. So but thank you so much for joining us. I'll look forward to you hopefully joining us in the next episode of the Tech Leaders Podcast.
Fantastic. And I'm looking forward to helping you get to the next 200.
Thank you, Kerensa. This episode was brought to you by bedigital. bedigital support leadership teams to optimize cost and get more out of technology investments. bedigital and the team have unrivaled expertise with technology license management and data remediation, and are therefore perfectly positioned to help prepare organizations for AI technology capability. And on the last point, bedigital have developed a cutting-edge AI readiness assessment, which provides tech leaders with a platform they need to make well-informed decisions about AI adoption strategy in 2024 and beyond. Go to bedigital UK to find out more and get in touch.